Namo Tassa. This video, I just want to touch on a specific topic that relates to Abhidhamma actually, which is then the deeper knowledge in Buddhism. Again, after watching one video from that channel, the Buddha's Wisdom, and it relates to a couple of things. One part that I have talked about before, I have made a video on that, which is what we call the 5 khandhas, which is already a quite advanced level of knowledge, as far as if you have experienced that, then you are already at a deeper level of concentration and awareness of the process of the mind. And this time, in this video, he was talking about the deeper knowledge described in the Abhidhamma of all the kind of processes of the mind, and basically everything that controls you and your mind, as much as you might think that you have free will or free choice or free thinking, and that you make your own decisions. Of course not. That's just that ego that likes to think so high of itself, but ultimately everything is conditioned, right? That's exactly the word as it is, as being a human. And only when you reach the highest level in Buddhism, and what the Buddha was trying to get people to, which is enlightenment or Nibbana, which is also defined as the unconditioned, and unfortunately only very few people can experience that. And it goes back to the same, because of that basic ego that likes to think it knows, or it knows itself. You know, how many people will say, okay, I know myself, or you don't know me, in many situations. And already there, the narcissistic side doesn't like that idea that actually somebody else can know you better than yourself. Something I've said a long time before, as I can read minds pretty easily, and of course not many people are ready to hear that and to accept or admit that. Anyway, so that's all the ego. And so as much as people think they know themselves, or they know what they think, what they want in life, what they like, it's all conditioned, and everything, just as anything else, just like the 5 khandhas, are processes, mechanics that happen billions of times per second. So of course it will take a very advanced level of concentration to get there, to become aware of those processes. As I mentioned before, already the 5 khandhas, exactly explaining that what people think already as thinking that they know out of ignorance, and still being ignorant about themselves too, is that they think the outside world is responsible or creates their feelings or emotions, but everything is a mind process, and only the contact from outside object to your sense receptor, as far as the 5 senses are concerned, and then the 6th one being the mind, then it's not actually the case that the outside world is responsible. Then the 4 next steps in the 5 khandhas are in the mind. So anything that you say that you see and you say that this looks good or looks ugly or bad, or that you hear and then that you don't like to hear, or you say, oh, that sounds so beautiful, all of that is not ultimately the object outside that is responsible, but it's all a mind process already, and it's the steps that come afterwards with the consciousness and perception and sensation and reaction. So at the end you always come up with that judgment, opinion on everything, and that's what you think is you, but it's not. It's totally conditioned through that process, the mind process, through your own life experience and education and everything. You become formatted. You have learned to self-condition yourself over the years, developing those habits, habit patterns, which again will become more or less the source of either trauma or OCD behaviors or addictions, whatever, all the negative aspect of the mind. And that's why at the end your conclusion is always you like or you don't like. So it goes back to the two main things, as we say in Buddhism, stemming from ignorance and delusion as moha. Then it becomes craving or aversion, lobha or dosa. At the end we can sum up things that way. But it's all the same process all the time, and that's happening in your mind. So those are the 5 khandhas, and that happens, of course, many times per second as your mind doesn't really rest, unfortunately, as you somewhat are aware of. And that's why you say that you can't meditate, because as soon as you actually sit down and start to rest and try to observe yourself and calm down, then you can do it. Why? Exactly because you realize at that moment that the mind is so restless. And it's not that you cannot meditate, it's just the normal thing for everybody, but it's just that most of the time, the rest of the time, you are so busy, exactly caught up unconsciously, completely conditioned by your environment all the time, that you are not even aware of that. Only when you start to sit down and take some time and calm down and start to focus, then you realize how busy your mind is. And that's not that you cannot meditate or meditation is not for you. It's just that that's the point of the practice of meditation, to start to realize this and work on it, to become more and more aware, and to start to actually take a bit more and more control of all that. And then you will reach a very advanced level where you can have enough concentration to become aware of each step of the 5 khandhas and realize that it's a chain reaction, and that's what you are about, your mind is about. But then in Abhidhamma, there is a deeper knowledge of all the processes of the mind, the relationships, the causal relations or whatever, conditioned relations and everything like this. And then there are so many of them and different categories, but that's a lot. Anyway, but that is to say that also in that video, the guy says something that's pretty good for what it means. He says you are always too late. And in that sense, exactly, that is a way to sum up the fact that you are not in control of yourself. You are not in control of your mind, and you are controlled by the conditioning and the environment. So you are always too late in the sense that most humans don't have enough awareness and presence, in the sense of being in the present moment. Favorite words of Eckhart Tolle. There is the now, being in the now, present in the moment. so that you can become aware of that process in your mind, from the trigger to the reaction, and the few steps in between. Even though people think there is no steps, yes, some scientists have explained that too and said, between stimulus and reaction there is a gap, and in that gap lay your ability to choose actually what your reaction would be. And if you can become enough aware, then you can start to have the time, that gap in between, to make the right choice, in one way, the right reaction, which is not about what is right or wrong reaction. It's simply that either you react positively to whatever happens, even if you mean that what happened was negative. That's the point. You can still respond positively or objectively, which I've explained before, trying to keep in mind the virtuous quality of the mind with metta, karuna, mudita, loving kindness or compassion or sympathetic joy, and ultimately upekkha, which is the best ultimate quality a human can have, a human mind can have, to develop and reach wisdom and ultimately the enlightenment. So you can remain in this area of the mind as a reaction, no matter what happens, or you can react more like blindly, unconsciously, just like animal level, very primitive mind level, which is the classic or instant reaction. Oh, I don't like it. Oh, I hate that. Or, oh, I love it. Oh, I really want more of that, without really thinking. And then that's what most people do, because they're not aware of the processes of the mind happening like that. And in the sense that he says that you're always too late, then what I want to talk about is during meditation, and that's the point, it's like a good psychology therapy or psychoanalysis, right? So things will come up, and then many times people will try to find a reason to what come up, and they really wonder, and that's why they will get out of the concentration most of the time, especially at the beginning when you are not so strongly minded to keep focused in your concentration. Then anything that comes up, whether physically, usually as far as pain, what you define as pain, again, pain is in the mind, it's not physical actually, it's just a physical sensation. Your mind translates it as pain, again through that process of the 5 khandhas, which is different from injury. If you have an injury, then it's another type of, it's a physical sensation, but it has a meaning that you should care for, as not destroying your body, of course. But usually what you consider pain is a mind interpretation of a sensation. So then whether something comes up physically or mentally, as far as basically old thoughts, old memories, traumatic memories, emotions, then you will be a bit triggered, and then many times you will want to find out, oh, but where does that come from? The whole where does that come from? And that exactly means that you don't know yourself, and you don't have any control of your mind or yourself. And that's what lies under that sentence from the guy saying you're always too late, because you try to find a cause to whatever happened in your mind or body afterwards, and you try to find an explanation. Or like he mentioned, you meet somebody and you have a first impression at once, right? You like or you don't like that person. Again, very basic, either or, black or white. But then it's just a first impression at once, and then afterwards you try to make justification for that, and you try to find a cause, and you figure out, oh yeah, I don't like this person because of this or that, or he was doing, or I like this person because of this or that. Unfortunately, most of the time because of very superficial values that you like people, and that's why it's not helping in life. But because people nowadays especially are very attached to the most superficial values. Another big pet peeve of mine, or battle horse, around people being attached to the most superficial, which is the look, the outside only, and no depth, nothing inside, nothing beyond the look and the appearance. But that's another topic, and I've talked about that in other videos. But the point is that, yes, you are always too late, in a sense that you have reacted already, and afterwards you try to figure out why you reacted like that, or what happened, or what is the source of what you felt physically or mentally, emotionally. And that's again what I meant, the point that you're not aware enough, and you're not in charge to confirm, and you just don't know yourself. Because if you know yourself truly as knowing the nature of the mind, knowing the human nature that way, and how it works, how the mind works, and the processes, and if you have developed enough awareness, mindfulness through concentration to have become aware of those processes, then you will be able to identify it at once, which is the ultimate presence. And then you will know what's happening, and you will know why you would feel like this afterwards. Exactly at the instant something happens, because always something happens. Again, your senses are always in constant contact with the environment, the world, people, and your own thoughts and your own emotions, right? And your own physiological processes inside your body also. There's always also that physical aspect inside your own body, which never sleeps, right? That's the point again. Unfortunately, people become even more unconscious where they sleep, but your mind is always processing things. That's why you are still alive. Your body never stops. You always have those billions and billions of biochemical reactions happening, and then the mind processing all this to adjust and kind of keep balance, so that you can simply stay alive. And you are very unaware of that, of course, right? Especially when you sleep. So unfortunately, on the other hand, that's kind of the only time when you are enough relaxed to an extent, except people who are very stressed, which is a lot now. People who are anxious, that's why they cannot sleep also, and then they have a not relaxing sleep actually, because they're agitated sleep, or nightmares, or everything. Anyway, but the point is that again, basically a huge benefit if you can practice meditation very seriously and regularly, to the point that you can reach deeper level of concentration. Then you will become aware of those different stages of the process of the mind, different processes of the mind, a different level, and ultimately that will become the difference between always being too late, as basically first reacting unconsciously, ignorantly, and then afterwards trying to make up for it by trying to justify or find excuses or find a reason, and not being aware of the reason, because you don't know yourself, you don't know the human nature, and you don't know how the mind works. Or if you have practiced enough and reached that level, then you can be very present, and at any given moment you will be aware at once of all the different moments when the environment through your senses is affecting you, but you are aware at that moment of everything that affects you at every sense, and thus ultimately the reaction as a consequence, right? As everything is karma that way, anyway, and then you ultimately can reach that level, which is exactly a sign of very advanced meditators, where you won't have the typical reaction, any reaction, actually. Again, people would think reaction means bad, and the bad reactions, and then when it's a good reaction, then it's good. But no, we know in Buddhism also advanced teaching and advanced practice that they are kind of a similar level of awareness or ignorance. As I mentioned before, whether you have an instant negative reaction and it becomes, anger at once, hatred, ill will, animosity, stress, big stress, everything, or suddenly you fall in love with that, you like so much, you feel so good, so happy, like this. Actually, that's the same level of ignorance. They are at the same level. And that's why many people cannot relate and don't understand and would rather criticize, of course, from the ego standpoint, because they can't admit wrong, because they are driven by ego, that they think that Buddhists are so insensitive or desensitized and they don't appreciate life anymore or whatever. No, it's just that we have a balanced mind. Exactly, we have control over our mind. We're not at the animal level anymore, like primitive mind level. So we are aware of what's going on in there at once, when any trigger shows up and teases any sense, the 5 physical senses and in the mind, we can be aware at once. So we would know the reaction that would happen given our personality as far as ego. If you still have the ego that, if you like this and you don't like that. But at the same time, you can reach that higher level where then there won't be any reaction, exactly because you have cancelled it. And that's the way the real psychology work, or the real healing and the real therapy, psychotherapy works for a human being, is that once you become aware of what's happening, truly aware inside, physically, let's say, vividly from experience, and you are aware of the process that's happening, that's exactly what dissolves the process itself and the consequences, the conditioned consequences. And that's why a real advanced Buddhist have the mastery of the mind that way, in the sense that they won't have like instant, unconscious, uncontrolled reaction, but they will be fully aware of what's going on, of what's affecting them through any of the senses at once. Then that awareness just cancels the unconscious rolling effect of the karma, of the reaction consequences that unconscious people have. As Eckhart Tolle likes to use the word unconscious people, trying not to offend too much, because there are certain words that he doesn't want to use, but it's actually meaning the same. It's ignorance, right? Unconscious, ignorant being. In Buddhism, again, many people, especially in some culture, they really don't like to hear the word ignorant, and they don't want to be called an ignorant, yet it's the reality. And that's a word we use mostly in Buddhism as the translation in English from avijja, which is the source of everything and the source of suffering, of course. The source of all your problem and trauma and everything is ignorance. So that's just a normal word in Buddhism, and we just have to accept it. And that's a start, if you mean to become Buddhist or to become aware and to aim towards wisdom, if not enlightenment, you definitely need to start to accept criticism or self-critics and self-objectivity that way. And call it for what it is. and not trying to get your ego pampered, right? Because that's the Buddhist process and the practice are exactly at the opposite of ego building, right? It's just getting rid of the ego at the end. So you just have to accept that. But if you can reach that level of awareness and presence in the moment through deep concentration, then you will be aware of the processes of the mind that usually happen unconsciously and create those instant reactions as a good Pavlovian dog, the whole conditioned reflexes of the mind actually, which often translate, of course, in the body. And again, you are so unaware that there was a process that you think your body just reacted, but it's not your body that just reacted. There was a process of different stages like that happened. But of course, you're just aware of the final reaction, the strong, gross level reaction, right? You're not at the subtler level of awareness. But if you practice enough, then you can reach that level. And as I explained, that's why you can reach that peace of mind, because you will be aware of everything that's happening around, how it would tease or trigger your sense receptors, how your mind would react normally. But because you have that awareness already, then you cancel that unconscious, instant, uncontrolled reaction. And that's exactly how you keep a mind very steady, strong, stable. And that's exactly how you get that harmony and peace of mind. And that applies both for what you consider negative or positive in life. And that's exactly what we call the middle path and the balanced mind. And then your life becomes much better, much easier.